May we pray. Holy God, open our eyes to what you would have us see. Open our ears to what you would have us hear. And open our hearts to those whom you would have us love. Amen. Well, today we have come to the last in the 12 steps of spirituality. So we've been working through these 12 steps through these past 12 weeks. And you might say that this step, number 11, holds all the others together. Oh, step 12 rather. Step 12 says that having done all the steps, we have had a spiritual awakening. Also, this Sunday, we come to the end of the church year with Reign of Christ Sunday. Now, I have to admit, I get a little edgy when I hear talk about Christ as King. A few years ago, a friend of mine had completed a 12-step program, and he told me that he had come to the realization that he needed to accept God as sovereign in his life. I pushed back at his remark because I resisted the language of Christ as King. As a woman in the church, I wanted to be free from the patriarchal image of a man wielding power and control. Only, of course, the Christ who reigns is not a man wielding power and control. He is not Lord of the manor, ruling it over the peasants. He is an entirely different kind of king. Today we read part of a letter written to the church in Colossae, a branch of the early church in modern-day Turkey. Paul, or someone writing in the style of Paul, reminds the Colossians that Christ is the head of the body, the church. They are to be encouraged and to remain strong because Christ rescues them from their current situation, transferring them to the kingdom of the beloved Son. This transference is not achieved by force, not by battles and weapons. This is achieved because the one who is over all puts himself under all by going to his execution on the cross. This was Christ's great act of suffering with humanity. As Richard Rohr says, from the cross he draws all suffering people to himself. The people of the first century Greco-Roman world had a particular image of king, and that was Caesar, the Roman emperor. Caesar was held in such high esteem that he was considered to be lord of the Roman subjects. He was declared to be Son of God. It was incredibly dangerous for Christians to call Christ the King and Son of God. This was seen as most disrespectful of Caesar and going against the empire. The Roman Empire was an immense organization that spanned the known world. This vast machinery was organized to preserve a kind of peace known as Pax Romana. So long as everyone knew their place, peace was maintained. Pax Romana was achieved by a strong military presence in the cities and towns of the empire. Religion was tolerated so long as people's allegiance was primarily to the empire. The people were kept quiet with bread and circuses. They had plenty to eat and were entertained by games in which chariots raced, gladiators fought to the death, and sometimes the enemies of Rome were thrown to wild animals. It may be that the small church in Colossae has to endure the persecution of Rome, or perhaps they are enduring something else. Whatever it is, Paul encourages them by telling them that Christ is over all things, over all powers. They are to live as though powers like the empire and the emperor are not in charge. Instead, God's rule of love, shown in Jesus, is in charge. This is the source of true peace, the peace of God's reconciliation with earth and heaven. They are to remember that Christ is an entirely different kind of king. 400 years ago, a bold group of pilgrims from Scrooby, Lincolnshire in England navigated the Atlantic Ocean in a small vessel. They were flying in the face of the oppressive religion of their time. The English church had split from Rome, but they then had set up almost an equivalent system, the Church of England. King Henry VIII had insisted on becoming head of the church, just as the Roman Church had the Pope. The church required the total allegiance of the population. The king, the lords of the land, and the church cooperated in controlling the wealth of the land. And the Christians in Scrooby resisted, claiming Christ as their only king. They relied on the scriptures as their source of truth and found the Church of England wanting. And so they set off to begin a new community in the religiously tolerant city of Leiden, in what is now the Netherlands. Well, things did not work out in the Netherlands. It turned out that Leiden was too tolerant for them. The English Christians were particularly concerned about their children being led astray, and also their living conditions were very poor, and they thought that they could do better. So they believed that they were led by God to begin a new community here in the New World, where they could practice their faith freely and without external temptations. They would not be beholden to the Lord of the Manor at harvest time, as they were in England. And so they entered into an uneasy allegiance with a British colonial operation called the Virginia Company, and they set sail for the Americas. Due to many delays, they did not leave until September 6th. And so, of course, they encountered stormy seas. They were aiming for the Hudson River, but they landed too far north, and they arrived not too far from here in November, at the beginning of a horrendous winter. Fortunately for the pilgrims, seafood was plentiful, and there was fresh water. The land had been cleared for planting by Native Americans who had been eradicated by diseases brought by early European settlers and explorers. The pilgrims took over the abandoned village of the Patuxet tribe, and still the first winter was very difficult for them. They were not prepared for this new harsh environment, and half of the passengers of the Mayflower died. The remainder survived in part because they found a cache of dried corn left by the Native Americans. The remaining Native American neighbors also helped the pilgrims survive those difficult first months. Well, later they attributed this good fortune to God's providence. The pilgrims were courageous in their faith, committed to Christ as sovereign, and still it seems they were oblivious of their indebtedness to the indigenous people. Like all our ancestors in the faith were flawed human beings. And this is something for us to reflect upon as we consider repairing the wrongs of the past. Well, by contrast with the pilgrims, my husband and I arrived in Boston following a Trans World Airlines flight from London via JFK Airport on October the 3rd, 1987. On Sunday, October the 4th, we ventured out into the streets of Boston to seek an apartment, and it was weather like this. We were met by almost freezing rain. Fortunately, the weather looked up in the following weeks, and I enjoyed a beautiful fall, getting to know the area while I looked for a job and secured my working visa. We were fortunate. We had the benefit of education and the resources to do all this. I was intrigued by many aspects of American life, especially religious life, partly inherited from the Pilgrims. I had the impression that US churches were active and preachers were much more inspiring than in the UK at that time. And it's taken me years to navigate the culture, the separation of religion and state, and how that actually plays out. I have become fascinated by how American Christians understand the reign of Christ and how the church that is not official operates. Perhaps I shouldn't be surprised that the church in America can be every bit as bound up to the culture as the church in Britain. Now, of course, King Henry VIII is long gone, and now the United Kingdom has a vibrant multicultural feel. But Christianity is still the official religion, and the Church of England is the established church. Queen Elizabeth serves as the nominal head. British people of my generation learned hymns and prayers in school by rote, and generally we know when to stand, when to sit and kneel during religious services. We barely notice that the traditions of the state and church meld together in the culture and in our minds. God Save the King is the national anthem. From the day I arrived in the United States, Americans have educated me on the separation of religion and state. And now I have become a part of this culture, I realize that here too we learn by rote. In this case, we learn to give thanks for religious freedom, and we do so without really knowing what we mean by it or how we are called to exercise that freedom. In many ways, we are lulled by something like Pax Romana. We have our modern-day bread and circuses. We have access to so many carbs, sugar, and caffeine, and let me tell you, I had my coffee in my car on the way to church this morning. But we go between this state of kind of sleepy fullness and craving, or at least I do. This may happen because this may happen to many of us on Thursday. But on that day, we have a very good excuse because we'll be celebrating Thanksgiving. So please don't hear this as a criticism of or a judgment of the things that we should and do enjoy. But besides sugar, of course, there are the effects of more serious addictive substances in our society. And we plug into entertainment night and day. Sports games and team loyalty have become the new religion. Revenue for media and entertainment is anticipated to reach $2.2 trillion by 2021. And let me tell you, I am so excited for the new season of The Crown. With all these distractions, have we, the church, lost our passion and the courage of the early Christians and the pilgrims? Have we lost our hunger for the love of Christ so that we substitute something else instead? And so we turn to the 12 steps of spirituality for some insight into these questions. In Breathing Underwater, Richard Rohr says, "The reason Alcoholics Anonymous has been more successful than most churches in actually changing people and helping people is that it treats addiction both spiritually and as an illness rather than a moral failure or an issue of mere willpower. AA reminds us that addicts are souls searching for love in all the wrong places, but still searching for love. And so I wonder, do you think that we are all dealing with an addiction to the culture? Are we searching for love in all the wrong places? My friends, making Christ as sovereign in our lives means waking up from our slumber. You might say that we are being invited to have a spiritual awakening. Making Christ sovereign does what Paul told the Colossians. It transfers us from the powers of darkness, whatever they may be for us, to the kingdom of the beloved Son. In this transformation, our primary allegiance becomes to Christ over all things. Our citizenship and allegiance is first and foremost to God's kingdom, which embraces all of humanity. Because this is an entirely different kind of king. May all God's people say, Amen.